I mean, the best part about the Holy Bolt Paladin, for me at least, is that I get to fist bump like I'm at a Jersey Shore reunion tour, and that I have a Pride Techno rave at my feet whenever I want with Salvation. That's nothing. That's not. Cut that out. Cut all of that out. Hello and welcome. Now that we've finally finished our level 99 push for Season 1 of Project Diablo 2, I'd like to formally introduce you to the Holy Bolt Paladin. This is a build that I took from level 1 all the way up to level 99, clearing through all of the vanilla content, and then moving on to tier mapping through tier 1, 2, and 3, endgame leveling content, and I'd like to go over the build path that I utilized for my skilling, as well as the gear that you could expect to have near the end of the season, or at the end of a character creation arc. Also covering over the stats, some decisions that we made along the way, and where the synergies really fell in line for this class. Overall, I'd say that the class is absolutely fantastic both in a team comp position, as well as single player magic finding and endgame content clearing. I'll also go through a lot of clips showing off some of that, some of our clear speeds, and overall give you a feel for what you can expect utilizing this class as the rest of the season moves forward. The Holy Bolt build that I'm going to cover in this review is predominantly focused on endgame clearing with an 8-person team, i.e. tier 1, 2, 3 maps, where your healing ability and your ability to deal magic damage in the face of many monsters which are going to have resistances or outright immunities to most forms of damage other than magic, and this will allow you to both contribute to total clear speed for your team and also provide an incredible utility not only in having salvation aura up, which we'll get more into later, but also providing healing for all the things that you don't typically think of, just because healing and support paladin aren't really things in vanilla Diablo 2. Namely, your ability to keep mercenaries and pets or summons alive for the entirety of your team. There's a lot to be said about maintaining permanent mercenary and summon uptime with the ability to heal them that would normally go unnoticed until you're trying to push for what we accomplished, which was level 99 first across just about every class other than Necromancer, I believe. So keep that in mind when we're looking at this build and what it seeks to accomplish. Now, onto the actual skill decision. You'll see that we spec down the primary trait, so this will include Holy Bolt, Holy Light, Blessed Hammer, Fist of Heavens into Holy Nova. To get to Holy Nova, we do have to put at least 1 point into the requirements, which include Smite, Charge, Conversion, and Holy Shield. The only other skill which I actually put points into, or hard points into, would be Salvation Aura. You'll see that we don't have points in any other tree. We don't have any offensive auras, we only have Salvation because it doesn't have any prereqs, and the rest of our points go directly into Holy Bolt and its synergies. The most important synergies for Holy Bolt, in my opinion, are the skills which actually give to the bonus damage which Holy Bolt receives, so that would be Holy Light, Fist of Heavens, and Holy Nova. The added benefit is that both Holy Nova and Fist of Heavens are skills that we're going to rely on heavily, going into endgame map clearing ability, and also in solo play. The other skill which Holy Bolt receives synergies from would be Prayer, so the Aura Prayer. Now this only adds to its heal synergy, and ultimately I didn't find this to be important enough to actually spec into it. I found that with Holy Bolt and Holy Nova, especially with Holy Nova healing up to 730 hit points, I was able to maintain near 100% uptime for both the entire team's mercenaries, their summons, and in a lot of cases when you're dealing with incredibly spicy maps, helping to maintain the full rejuve, or in PD2 the 65% rejuve economy, because there are a lot of situations where you have level 97 and 98 characters that are just on the brink of death, where a huge AoE heal was basically the difference between life and death. Thing I want to get into before we touch on anything in particular is the skill Holy Light. I want to love this skill. I really do. I love the idea of being able to spam a heal. Holy Light is a skill which you can cast at your highest FCR breakpoint with no cooldown that will, for all intents and purposes, permanently keep anybody healed on the battlefield. Now there's a big problem with this, and I'll try to highlight it in a scenario that is very relevant here. Let's go into a high density area. So, you'll see that The skill Holy Light can target anything on the screen. So while I'm trying to click and move my way around and trying to get to Chalan to keep him all healed up, you'll notice that I'm able to target anything else on the screen. This is probably one of the most annoying and biggest issues that I found with the Holy Bolt build in general, was the idea that you both need to be able to move, but since you're a paladin, you're going to have an aura on your right click the vast majority of the time, you're forced to use left click for all of your skill casting. Now, since I can target both friendly units with something like Holy Bolt, and also enemy units with Holy Bolt, actually singularly targeting something on screen is for all intents and purposes completely impossible. This turns the skill Holy Light, which could be a very clutch, interesting skill to use, basically impractical in any way, shape, and form. The only legitimate application of Holy Light that I can conceive of is if you have a low-powered team with somebody who's attempting to tank mini Ubers, Ubers themselves, or declone, and you have a Holy Paladin whose entire purpose is to sit there and spam heals on them. Some ideas that we were talking about while the team was continuing to progress through endgame content was, what if Holy Light was more like an area of effect? So something along the lines of Fissure or Blizzard that had a duality to it. If a monster were to pass through it, it were to deal damage, or if a friendly player were to pass through it, it would heal them. Now, I don't know how to code this game, I don't know how difficult it would be, but I see Holy Light in a place where, as it stands right now, it's completely unusable, and unless something pretty drastic was to change, this skill is basically, it's going to be one of those things where people don't even really remember the name of it, they just know it's a synergy and they gotta put points into it. Now the most important skill, the skill that the entire build is named off of, Holy Bolt. How does Holy Bolt work? Holy Bolt will launch a projectile. This projectile pierces to the edge of its total range, which is about a half screen length away, and I'll go ahead and highlight that in a second. And it both heals allies and hurts enemies. Like other projectiles in the game, Holy Bolt will change its spread pattern depending on how far away from the middle, or on top of your character, your cursor lies. You'll see that if you center Holy Bolt directly on top of your character, you have a 90-degree spread from the topmost and the bottommost projectile, with the middle projectile traveling at a 45-degree angle. This is maximum spread, and you are able to hone this down to basically a single parallel line travel for all three projectiles by indicating at the furthest range. So let's go to the total top corner here. You'll see that about a half screen distance is where the projectiles will die out, and they basically travel along the exact same trajectory with a 1 to 2 degree separation, and at the end you can see that they become multiple projectiles. In Season 1, while initially unintentional, ultimately Senpai Something and team decided to have Holy Bolt's projectiles shotgun. Now what does shotgun mean in this context? Shotgun means that for every projectile that hits a monster, they will all register and deal damage. This means that if you stand directly in the face of something and you shoot all three Holy Bolts in a tight enough spread, they will all deal damage. This is incredibly important for two reasons. A, Holy Bolt is no slouch on damage. You'll see that all three projectiles on average are going to be dealing somewhere between 4,900 to 5,400. Right, so let's call that 5,100 damage in total, 5,100 damage on average, roughly. If you hit all three of these into a single target, 15,000 damage, and considering we're hitting the maximum breakpoint for FCR, which is 125, we are doing 15,000 damage multiple times per second in a piercing projectile. Just think about that damage. Holy Bolt right now is in a place where, since it has the magic damage carrier, the vast majority of monsters, even those that have resistance to magic damage, are completely shred apart by this attack, especially if you're shotgunning and maintaining the 125 faster cast rate breakpoint. You are able to increase the spread to handle larger clear areas, so more open areas like tier 1 maps or tier 2 maps, as well as something like cows. The ability to spread damage and the ability to hyper shotgun means that you can both clear large scale areas and also manage more restricted areas like Tier 3 maps, Maggot Lair, some parts of Ancient Tunnels, and most importantly, bosses. Shotgunning bosses for 15,000 magic damage 2 to 3 times per second is absolutely insane damage, and I cannot overstate this enough. The damage on Holy Bolt is absolutely wild. You'll see with our total build we have 33 total points in Salvation, so that is the 20 hard points that we put into it plus 13 points. And what this is giving us is 100 resistance across the board, and 52% elemental damage. Places where this is really important, you might not necessarily consider it, is especially on enchant sorceresses. The Salvation damage increase means that the initial enchant that a fire or cold enchant sorc puts onto a player is amplified, and then the damage on the player is amplified by Salvation again. That's right, you double dip on the damage here. This appears to be intentional for all intents and purposes, and ultimately means that having a Salvation Paladin is an absolute mainstay in any group that is attempting to first clear to 99 and push ranked boards all across. And also, especially in hardcore player construction, you're going to want to have that 100% maximum resistance across the board. This means that as long as your team plays smart, they can worry about speccing into much heavier damage builds and maintaining the same level of survivability as some other groups which may attempt to max res across the board and then basically waste the Salvation buff. I think this is incredibly important for our success this season, because having a Salvation Paladin was a necessary part of the group composition. Keeping in account that the majority of people who have the largest clear speeds are elemental damage dealing primary sources or secondary sources as an enchant sorceress on a melee build, Salvation is 100% worth the 20 hard points, and even in solo play I keep Salvation as my primary aura. The primary build for Holy Bolt means that we're going to max Holy Bolt, Holy Light for the synergy, although again we're not really going to use this, Fist of Heavens for the synergy, and also as an alternative damage dealer for magic immunes, i.e. Unravelers or Grotesques, which find themselves in endgame tier maps, which are very annoying, but luckily we have something to deal with them, and Holy Nova. Let's get into gear choice. Now, what I am currently wearing is something that I would argue is the absolute bare necessity for required items looking at an endgame build that is focused on being able to actually increase your team's clear speed with DPS increase, but also the appropriate amount of versatility, utility, and practicality as far as aura decision, itemization, and total loadout. Now I see you looking at a very interesting piece of gear, and I promise you, this is total 5-head, this is best in-slot gear, everybody should be on this hype train, and I'm talking about Tier Haunch. Now I get it. Tier Haunch. Who uses Tier Haunch? Well, I'll tell you, the number 2 Paladin and Softcore Ladder uses Tier Haunch, i.e. the boy you see before you. And there's a lot of reasons why. Tier Haunch, the only thing Tier Haunch doesn't have is Can't Be Frozen. Everything else on Tier Haunch is absolutely disgusting. And we'll go over a couple different things. Namely, +2 to defensive bonus. Defensive auras, +2 to a whole skill tree on your boots. Why is that so important? Looking at Salvation right now, elemental damage 52%, take off Tier Haunch, elemental damage 50%. By putting on this pair of boots, for all single dip skills, you're increasing total DPS by 2%. That's insane. Nobody else has a pair of boots that increases 7 other people's total DPS by 2%. And for any skills that double dip, i.e. enchant sorceresses, you're increasing their damage output by 4%. Mathematically, that's not exactly how it works out, but just stick with me here. It's for the ease of YouTube. We can't get stuck on this. It's too many things to cover. In addition to that, it gives you availability to Vigor Aura with all of your plus to skills. My Vigor Aura turns out to be a level 14 Vigor Aura, which is fantastic. Running through town becomes a lot faster before Mercenaries Vigor Aura from Act 1 have been kicked in. Being able to move yourself throughout a map, being able to go back and get something and then run back up, it's just really nice to have Vigor Aura available, especially for free, considering you need to put in 3 points just to get down to Vigor Aura, and we don't have time for that. We're too busy trying to maximize 5 different skills for this build, right? So don't sleep on Tier Haunch. In addition, it gives strength and dexterity, all res. It has 20% faster run luck on it. These things drop all the time, so getting a really nice pair that you're able to corrupt with something insane on it, like if you could get Can't Be Frozen on these bad boys, ooh, that'd be good. Honestly, I think too many people are sleeping on Tier Haunch for Paladins in general, but also for the Holy Bolt build, and most importantly, for the Holy Bolt support build in players' 18 compositions. Moving on to our primary weapon, we have Hand of the Blessed Light. So Hand of the Blessed Light, along with the Redeemer, are both Paladin scepters that read +6 to Holy Bolt. The reason why Hand of the Blessed Light is so important is because this also says +4 to Holy Nova. The only downside to Hand of the Blessed Light is that it doesn't come along with any faster cast rate. That does mean that you're going to have to maximize faster cast rate from your other primary sources, i.e. chest, gloves, helmet, rings, and amulet, considering our shield is also not going to have any faster cast rate on it. But once you hit the 125 breakpoint, being able to swap over to a Holy Bolt, Hand of the Blessed Light, means that you're getting +6 to Holy Bolt in one item. That's so insane. If they ever make Holy Light more reasonable, it also reads +6 to Holy Light and +4 to Fist of Heavens. Honestly, this thing is best in slot. You can't convince me otherwise. Skin of the Viper Magi was an easy pick for the chest, bringing +1 all skills, fast hit recovery, and up to 30 all res. You'll see that we were able to find one where we actually slammed Cannot Be Frozen on it. You do need to have at least one source of Can't Be Frozen for any endgame build. I mean, well, actually any build across any form of gameplay, really. The fact that being frozen will reduce your cast rate in total is such a huge hurdle that you need to overcome as far as your gear is concerned. I would argue that Skin of the Viper Magi, either with +1 or Cannot Be Frozen, are probably your best corruptions here, and I realistically can't see this build without at least a plain Skin of the Viper Magi on it, because of how difficult it is to hit the 125% faster cast rate breakpoint. As far as helm pieces go, we're looking at something that's pretty standard here, a 220 with bonus stats on it that are really good. Now, I gotta be honest with you all, my amulet is scuff. It's good enough. It's good enough. We'll leave it there. It's good enough. A 220 amulet with all res, strength, life, mana, anything else you can put on it is definitely best in slot here. With a corruption of either additional faster cast rate or +1 to all skills, you can make yourself an incredibly powerful, absolutely disgusting amulet. I never did. This is the best one that I got. It's a 220. I don't know, sue me, alright? It does the job that it set out to do. Something that's actually important to note here. In single play, Holy Light and Holy Bolt drain mana at an incredibly fast rate. I actually have a really huge pool of regenerate mana on my character just by the nature of the gear that we're wearing. So making a caster amulet is huge, and it still drains mana at an incredible rate. So just keeping in mind that regen mana is secret resident sleeper as far as a decent alternative affix to have on gear. Herald of Zakarum. You really don't need to talk a lot about this. It says +4 to Holy Bolt, +2 to your auras. It says max block 75%, which is really easy to get to even at level 99. It's got strength. It's got vitality. It has all res. You don't need it to do anything else. Mage Fist. The Mage Fists that I'm wearing come along with a corruption of additional faster cast rate. You'll see that with all my points together, our faster cast rate is at 126, 1 point over the maximum requirement for the 125 breakpoint. Mage Fist or Triangles are best in slot here. I like the regen mana. Personally, I've said why I like it before. I like the regen mana. If you're having trouble stacking all res, getting Triangles for the cold res is also a great option. Arachnid Mesh. I'm running a 19 Arachnid Mesh. This thing is absolutely best in slot. I can't think of any other belt that I would like to see other than Arachnid Mesh. Realistically, on this build, your survivability comes from being able to maintain all res without having to worry about it, and being able to keep a mercenary alive. You really don't need survivability from your belt slot in this case, so Arachnid Mesh is going to be best. Nothing too crazy on the ring slot here. A 10 FCR ring with dual res with a slam of additional resistance. It does the job. It does everything I want it to do. Stone of Jordan, we're able to put one skill ring on just because the Paladin has such a high FCR breakpoint requirement that putting on 2 is a little difficult without some really GG corruptions. Here we have Dex on the Stone of Jordan that helps us to maintain max block once we hit level 99. PComs with life, faster hit recovery, or other stats which are desirable are what you're going to find in the inventory down here. Basically the highest life that we were able to come across. I do have one that had a little bit of extra Dex. This does help me hit faster block rate without having to put more hard points into it. But honestly, I'd be trading this thing out for a 45 life for the first opportunity that we have. Across the top, nothing too interesting other than a few pieces of faster hit recovery. In maps, you're able to roll with negative hit recovery. And if people haven't seen already in BT's videos, when you have negative 34% hit recovery because you don't wear a single piece of hit recovery gear, you do recover for 30 plus seconds after being put into hit recovery. It's pretty ridiculous. Hopefully that changes later. Hopefully you can't get put into negative hit recovery, because it was actually faster to save, exit, and rejoin the map than to wait for my character to recover. But small charms of Vita, a little bit of hit recovery, just enough to hit the next breakpoint. If I had one more piece along with hit recovery on the hobble, I'd be at the next breakpoint. Honestly, I don't think it was too important in freestyle gameplay, and coming from a speedrunner perspective, being able to survive without getting hit is something that I specialize in. I think for other people, you definitely do want to be hitting at least the 27 faster hit recovery breakpoint, or maybe the 48 if you're playing on hardcore. After that point, I really think that's up to your own personal choice. Obviously, we have the Nihilus, we have a Paladin Torch. Don't look at the stats, don't even pretend to look at the stats. This thing is made out of potatoes. And just a throwaway large charm here. This really should be, Vita or hit recovery, whichever one I'm needing to hit a particular breakpoint. I don't even know how this piece of garbage stayed in here. Can somebody look into this for me later? No, it's just me. I'm talking to no one. That makes sense. This is a single person team production. What am I doing? The last thing that we'll cover here are attributes. Nothing that interesting to say here. Obviously, put in enough strength to be able to use the gear that you want, which a required strength here of 89, a required strength here of 103, does mean that even though we're not using a Monarch, we still have to put a decent amount into strength, especially if we want to be able to use some Magic Find gear later and not have to rely on the plus 20 strength from your tiara, or from your rings, or from your amulet. Enough dex to hit max block with Holy Shield right here, so you'll see that we're at the 75 block for Hawes. This did require us to go up to like the 138 dex point, I think, without any additional from gear. And then obviously the rest into Vitality. You should, by the proxy of the rest of your gear, get some mana or some energy points from elsewhere. I don't think it's worth it to put in. I'd rather just drink potions than come out with a lower life total. You'll see that without a CTA, without a bow or battle command, we're sitting at 1912 life and 503 mana. This is more than enough to survive just about everything that you're doing. I think when we were in tier 3 maps and we had a max level bow, so like a level 51 bow, and then a max level Oak Sage, I was sitting at around 3,300 hit points, maybe a little bit more, maybe 3,500 hit points. So your survivability is more than good either in the single player format or in a group composition as well. The base Magic Find gear setup that I'm using for mapping is going to look a little bit light on total Magic Find on the character until you consider a really important thing. You'll see that we are sitting at about 274 Magic Find, which is by no means the highest amount that you can get up to, especially even on just this gear itself. But you'll see that for my personal Magic Finding, I've swapped out to a set of Chance Cards. Obviously, the Skin of the Viper Magi is going to have either a Perfect Topaz or an Ist in it. We're using a Gold Wrap that I corrupted with a reduction in curses, which is pretty nice considering we don't have a cleansing aura. a 31 Naggles just as a throwaway, 41 War Travs that came along with some light res from a corruption. We swap out to a Geeds. The reason why I'm using this Geeds is because it has high rolls on everything. Reducing vendor price is incredibly important in PD2 because buying the different orbs that you need for transmuting maps gets really, really expensive. And then smattering in a bunch of 6 and 7 Magic Find Small Charms, and what you get is 274 Magic Find. For people who don't know, stacking at least 200% Magic Find is kind of the go-to benchmark for most builds. Anything over that is still good, but you're going to get negative returns on each point of Magic Find that you put into it, considering it like very drastically curves downward as you stack higher and higher amounts. One of the most important things to consider in PD2 is that some of the best Magic Find areas that you can go into are maps. So you might want to say, well, if I'm going into like the highest density, best areas for Magic Finding, don't I want to stack as much as possible? And the answer is you kind of don't have to. So if we take your average example of a map, so this map is going to basically have double the total monster density, and in the map itself, you're going to gain an additional 94% Magic Find. So that means that our build is sitting on 368% Magic Find without having to stack any additional pieces and lose any kill speed. And with the gear that I'm wearing right now, I'm still hitting the 75 breakpoint, so the second fastest breakpoint, and I'm still maintaining a plus 23 skill point build. So I'm rocking a level 43 Holy Bolt. Our damage for a Holy Bolt is sitting at 4,000 to 4,500 per bolt. This means that our clear speed is still going to be pretty close to optimal without having to stack too much Magic Find. Again, inside of this map right here, we're going to be killing twice the amount of monsters that we normally would because of that 120% monster density, and we're going to be over 350 Magic Find on the gear. And if that doesn't convince you enough, let's look at an example where the numbers get a little crazy, right? So look at this map. This map comes with 155% Magic Find. Our build is going to be sitting at 429 Magic Find. And the only pieces that I'm wearing are War Travs, a Naggle Ring, a Viper Magi, a Gold Wrap, and a Chance Card. I haven't even swapped out to some of like the much higher Magic Find options that are available in this game. Now, for people who are looking for cheap alternatives to really crank up their total Magic Find, there are 3 items which in PD2 go a lot farther than they typically would in vanilla Diablo 2. Most notably, Alibaba, just a good alternative. You can keep this on the swap. I personally have Lems in it because I do Trav runs with this, because gambling is so important since we're looking for awesome bases to corrupt, either amulets, rings, or circlets. So getting the extra Magic Find is great for me there. Something like a Griswold's Heart with P-Gems or Ists in it is also really good. One, because it comes stacked with strength on it. So if you're somebody who relies on the strength from your gear, you can actually strength bug on some of your gear here, and it'll maintain itself. It also comes along with the tag of +2 to Paladin skills, so you're not reducing your damage output by that much. And something like a Millibregas. In PD2, Millibregas rolls all the way up to 60% Magic Find. You can then corrupt it for additional Magic Find, Hours corrupted with Lightning Res, which is great for survivability. And then you can puzzle box it. So if you can get a Millibregas with Magic Find corrupted on it, get maximum slots out of it, and then put 3 Ists in it, you're literally not going to find anything other than a 6 Ist Phase Blade that is going to come out with more Magic Find on it. In this setup, without anything from the map, we're sitting on 481 Magic Find, and if we were to go into a map like this, that means that we're looking at 636 Magic Find. That's without swapping out Ring, or Amulet, or Circlet. So what I would like to do now is just go through a lot of different Magic Find areas that people typically will venture through, especially on something like a Holy Bolt Paladin where you have massive full screen clear and also good mobility, and just kind of highlight how easy it is to work in a lot of different areas. The first place that I think is Magic Find viable, and also is somewhere where the Holy Bolt Paladin really shines, is something like the Pit. While you're on BattleNet, obviously your maps are not static, but the Pit is, for all intents and purposes, always in a static area. So whether you're going to have your exit over to the Black Marsh off to the left here, or the pit beneath, or maybe the pit just beneath the exit from the outer cloister. Getting to the pit is something that is very quick. You can obviously clear the packs along the way, and even on my Magic Find set, you'll see that we are one-shotting just about everything here. Going down into the pit, being able to maintain your mobility and your clear speed with either 1 or 2 Holy Bolts basically means that this place is a complete cakewalk. There's nothing in here that is actually immune to magic damage, so we don't have to worry about that at all. And if we ever get into a situation where it's a little bit tricky, we can always teleport our mercenary on top of us, telestomp, and then keep moving. So we'll see there that I basically didn't even have to look at what I was doing. I could charge around, and if I ever stopped walking while playing, I could just Holy Bolt, and then randomly Holy Nova, and I'll basically clear out the screen, right? The pit is somewhere that is a classic to farm. I'd say farming here on the Paladin is absolutely viable, and you could clear through pit maps as fast as you want. Remember, on PD2, on Battle.net, there is no server down or realm down from rejoining games too quickly. So you're basically able to farm pit non-stop as much as you want. Another place that's incredibly viable to farm out is a Travancore. Using charge to get yourself over to the High Council, and then a 1-use swap on teleport to reposition the mercenary means that you are in the midst of everything that you need to be. Very quickly clear out anything around you that's actually posing a threat. They'll typically bunch up on top of your mercenary, and then Holy Bolt will tear through them. Again, remembering that we have shotgun damage available to us and pierce on all of our bolts. Pick up your ill-gotten gains, go gamble yourself a beautiful circlet, call it a day. Something that not everybody might consider to be viable, but again I find on the Charge Paladin, and also if you have a good understanding of layouts, is actually going and farming Mephisto even though we're not teleporting anywhere. Utilizing Charge means that we can very quickly clear ourselves through, clear out any packs that we find along the way, and then continue to move until we find Mephisto, or Endurance level 3. Remembering that we have teleport available means we can pop walls whenever that's required, using charge to finish clearing any gaps. And if you get yourself a decent layout, like right here, you're in and out of Mephisto's Endurance level 3 very quickly. What I like about this is that you get to kill a second round of council members. Make sure to not have Mephisto travel over the pools of blood, because he will absolutely drop all of his loot into there. And I like to go through and clear the council members as well. The same thing applies here. They'll typically group up on top of your mercenary. They absolutely hate your mercenary, and they want to clear him out as much as possible. The benefit to killing these guys here is that you'll honestly have an additional boss pack the majority of the time, and then you get to pop Mephisto's chest as well. Getting into the Chaos Sanctuary is usually 1 to 3 teleports, which is really nice considering that's how many charges we get on it. You can take the approach of clearing or just teleporting the rest of the way, especially if you have Spell Steal on. You can actually just teleport your way all the way to the star. Obviously that does mean that you're going to have to be picking up at least 60,000 gold worth of items along the way to make up for the repair costs. The repair costs do mean that you have a really good opportunity to go sell the items as well, so you're not being horribly inefficient by utilizing Spell Steal. It kind of gives yourself a very natural tempo. At this point, I'm just using Naja's staff, but I think realistically, if I was doing like super hardcore continuous farming of Chaos Sanctuary, I would only ever be using Spell Steal. Now, I know that you can use Enigma, and obviously a lot of people are still going to be using Enigma from the old days when everybody was a Blessed Hammer player. I personally don't like the Blessed Hammer playstyle, and Holy Bolt does require you to make a lot more decisions than you normally would. Blessed Hammer, you kind of just teleport around and then cast Blessed Hammer. With Holy Bolt, you actually got to aim. While it's not incredibly difficult, it does require a bit more play to it than I found on the old Holy Bolt days. Who doesn't love some Tancrids? Everybody loves Tancrids. Leave a TP here just so you can capture as much as possible. You're not able to seal pop like you normally would on somebody with Enigma, but you are able to get a little bit of additional clear using the fact that a town portal will stand in for you as far as player presence. Down over here. Did we get anything cool? We did not.
Not even death can save you from me.
And just get your mercenary right here, and you'll see that we absolutely destroy Diablo. I think that was a 7-second Diablo, maybe less, because of that shotgun Holy Bolt damage. Then the other things I like to hit up on my own personal magic find is I just like to go off and do a quick Pindle. Clears it off really nice, leaves you in Act 5 for when you save and exit, which means that you have a pretty short distance to your closest waypoint, so you have as little downtime as possible in town. The only thing that's interesting about Pindle is that there is an angle, it's roughly between these two pillars here, where casting your Holy Bolt does not seem to hit the Pindle minions. The same issue occurs in tier 2 maps. Just be conscious of that. If Pindle's minions are not being put into hit recovery, you're not actually hurting them, so just move slightly. And here you go, placed in Act 5, very close to a waypoint. You're able to quickly get back down into it. The last thing that I want to go over is maps. Now, there are, I think, two primary ways that you could run yourself through these maps. You could take the full clear method where you literally kill everything on the map. I don't think that that's wrong, and realistically I think that's going to be the best way, just because maintaining like as much total magic find potential as possible is probably the best way. I find that full clearing the map on Holy Bolt Paladin feels a little boring and also a little nerve-wracking, just because you kind of do actually have to pay attention while you're going through here. If you find yourself in a bad way, you can and will just die. Even with max block, there are situations where some of the affixes that you roll on the map are just quite frankly deadly. So I kind of determine how froggy I'm feeling. So I either will just kind of go like full tilt out, clear myself just all the way up to the boss and then keep moving forward like that, or full clear the map. I find that running the maps with multiple people in them keeps me a lot more engaged and a lot more excited, because I actually have to pay attention to whether or not I'm slurping up all the best gear. So if I'm looking to do a full clear on a map, I will run it with multiple people. But the only thing that you really need to be aware of is when the map has really heinous affixes on it. So while I don't have an example of it right now, I have seen maps that will roll with bleed on attacks. These I've found to be incredibly deadly. I find it very difficult to actually keep my mercenary alive on a map like that. And ultimately, full clearing those were costing me more gold than the things that I was getting out of them, so I ended up stop running any map that actually says that affix, actually has that affix available on it. Like, you decide what you consider to be appropriate levels of risk and reward, but on a lot of maps I find that I can play pretty aggressively, not necessarily paying too much attention. You know, if I'm just trying to autopilot, just trying to, you know, grind out some magic find while I'm watching a stream, or if I, you know, have something else going on. Running a basic tier 1 map, as long as it has any magic find on it at all, is definitely worth it. Maps, tier 1 maps start off as area level 87, so keep that in mind. Every item in the game can drop from these maps. You don't need to get like any insane modifiers on it or plus to area level, which doesn't currently work in Season 1. The boss itself on a Holy Bolt Paladin can be a little tricky to deal with. You know, I've never really been in any danger of dying necessarily, but hopefully there are some examples here just so I can show you. The biggest issue is the fact that Unravelers, which typically find themselves near the boss here if they're one of your monster types, are immune to magic, so you're going to have to use Fist of Heavens to clear them. The other issue is that the actual skeletons that sit with the boss are very powerful, so they really don't get cleared out by your Holy Bolt all that quickly. You'll see that I'm shotgunning this Burning Dead, and it's taking at least a dozen Holy Bolts to actually clear him. What I find to be my best strategy is clear off everything else around, you know, reposition my mercenary into the area, and then, while my mercenary is basically getting continuously rocked by these archers, I myself will focus on the boss. So I'm going to shotgun down to where the boss is. My mercenary just died, so that's great. What I would highly recommend for the boss area is basically getting everything cleared out until there's nothing on screen other than yourself, the boss themselves, the cartographer, and the undead, which he is going to perpetually be regenerating or reviving, there's not much that you can do about that in particular. I like to try to get a little bit ahead of my mercenary just so that I can be blocking everything as it comes. Obviously I have a much higher block chance than my mercenary does, considering I'm using Holy Shield and actually have a shield. And then once you have the boss down, going, looting him, and then getting out of this area. The undead for a Holy Bolt Paladin, unless you have monsters rest in peace, are basically unmanageable as long as the boss himself is alive. You can always teleport yourself up to the boss, make sure that you're getting like that maximum shotgun damage, and then, like I said, getting out as soon as you can. It's not really worth it to stick around in this area. My overall experience with the Holy Bolt Paladin in a full support role was ultimately very positive. I think that Holy Bolt Paladin is in a great place right now. I even dare say, to my own detriment, that I think it might be a little bit too powerful. I think something coming from a pure support build in consideration should be a little less viable in the endgame as far as solo MFing or solo content clearing. But if that's the worst thing that I can say about it, you can see why I would highly recommend trying this out for anybody who's looking to get into the Paladin. The Holy Bolt build obviously does not compare to the total damage output and survivability and solo ability as something like a Zeal Paladin or a Dual Dream Zeal Paladin. But for the cost of the items that you need here and the relative commonality of them, I think getting into this build and getting into an endgame version of it is a lot more viable and readily available to your average casual player, all the way up to either professional or rank pushing seasoned player as well. The ability to fully support a team, maintain mercenary pet and summon uptime, and also keeping yourself alive with a lot of great versatility and utility is something that can't be understated. And overall, the Paladin feels like it's in a much more engaging place than something like a Blessed Hammer Paladin from Vanilla, where you kind of just cast a hammer, it spins around and kills everything. If I were to rate the Holy Bolt Paladin on a power scale of 1 to 10, 1 being an Amazon walking out of Act 1 town with just a javelin in her hand and a hope and a dream, and 10 being something like the Dual Dream Zealer or the Schaefer's Phoenix Zealer Paladin, I'd say Holy Bolt Paladin probably lands somewhere around a 7 to a hard 7.5 as far as total viability across the spectrum of things that you would hope to do in this game. I would love to know what your opinions are, and also I am trying to be a corporate chill, so if you could just engage and comment below, and I do hate that I'm pointing down at my junk, I am sorry. But just like, go do it. I'd love to hear what you have to say. This is my first season pushing level 99 ever. I've only ever seen level 92 before. So as far as like super end game total min-maxing, I don't have all the answers. I do think that I've had a pretty comprehensive experience on this grind, but really, I'd love to know from anybody who's more seasoned, either on a Blessed Hammer Paladin from Vanilla or other people who tried Holy Bolt Paladin out this season. Just let me know what you think. And if you have any questions or anything that you wanted to see this build do, I can maybe make a follow-up video or include something in the next video that I put up. But until that time, thank you so much. Again, I'd like to say thank you to Senpai Something and the entire team of developers for this mod. It was an amazing experience, and I can't wait to see what this looks like in the future come Season 2, and I hope to see you all there as well.